Story 1. I'll never forget that one creepy coworker I had a while back. His name was Mike, and he was always so tired and on edge. He was tall and thin, with pale skin and sunken eyes. He dressed in dark, baggy clothes, and he always had a hood pulled up over his head, even indoors. One day, I was working late in the office, and Mike was the only other person there. I was in my cubicle trying to focus on my work when I heard a noise coming from behind me. I turned around, but I didn't see anything. I went back to work, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. A few minutes later, I heard the noise again. This time, it was louder. I slowly turned around, and my heart skipped a beat. Mike was standing there staring at me. His eyes were wide and wild, and his face was twisted into a mask of terror. "It's coming," he whispered. "What's coming?" I asked, my voice trembling. "The thing," he said. "It's been following me." I didn't know what to say. I just stared at him, my mind racing. Was he serious? Or was he just playing a prank on me? "It's coming for you," he repeated. "You have to get out of here." He grabbed my arm and tried to pull me out of my cubicle, but I resisted. "No," I said, "I'm not going anywhere." He let go of my arm and backed away. His eyes were filled with sadness and despair. "I tried to warn you," he said, "but now it's too late." He turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows. I sat there for a long time, trying to process what had just happened. Was Mike crazy? Or was he really in danger? I didn't know what to do. I decided to stay in the office and finish my work, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I kept glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see Mike there or something else, but all I saw was the empty office, bathed in the fluorescent glare of the overhead lights. Finally, I finished my work and gathered my things. I hurried out of the office and into the night, my heart pounding in my chest. I never saw Mike again, but I still think about him sometimes, and I still wonder what he was trying to warn me about. Story 2. Lisa, my coworker, always seemed like a normal, friendly person. We used to chat during lunch breaks about everything from work to our personal lives. But one eerie day, everything changed. We were having lunch together as usual when Lisa suddenly stopped talking and stared at me with dark, unblinking eyes. Her voice shifted into something unrecognizable, low and menacing. "You can't go home tonight," she said. "Someone is going to die." I was taken aback. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "You can't trust the others," she said. "They're not what they seem." She leaned in closer, her eyes wild and manic. "Don't go home tonight," she repeated, "or you'll be next." I didn't know what to say or do. I had never seen Lisa like this before. She was usually so calm and collected, but now she seemed like a completely different person. "Lisa," I said gently, "are you okay?" She didn't answer. She just stared at me with those dark, unblinking eyes. I felt a chill run down my spine. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to believe that Lisa was just having a bad day, but something about her behavior didn't sit right with me. I quickly finished my lunch and excused myself. I went back to my desk and tried to focus on work, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. All day long, I kept glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see Lisa there, staring at me with those dark, unblinking eyes. But she was nowhere to be seen. When it was finally time to go home, I hesitated. I remembered Lisa's warning, and I couldn't help but feel uneasy. But I also didn't want to overreact. Maybe she had just been having a bad day, after all. I took a deep breath and headed out the door. As I walked to my car, I kept glancing over my shoulder. I felt like I was being watched, but every time I turned around, there was no one there. I finally got to my car and got in. I locked the doors and started the engine. I took one last look around, but there was no sign of Lisa. I let out a sigh of relief and started driving home. But as I drove, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. Every time I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw headlights behind me. But when I slowed down, the car behind me slowed down. When I sped up, the car behind me sped up. I started to panic. I didn't know what to do. I was all alone and I felt like I was being hunted. I finally pulled over to the side of the road and called 911. The dispatcher told me to stay put and that they would send a police car to my location. I waited in my car, my heart pounding in my chest. I kept looking in the rearview mirror, but the headlights were gone. A few minutes later, a police car arrived. The officer got out and asked me what was wrong. I told him about Lisa's warning and the car that had been following me. The officer took my statement and then went to search the area, but he didn't find any sign of the other car. The officer told me that I was probably just being paranoid, but he offered to escort me home. I gratefully accepted his offer. We drove to my house and the officer made sure that I was safely inside before he left. I went to bed that night feeling exhausted and scared. I didn't know what to think about Lisa's warning or the car that had been following me. But one thing was for sure, I was never going to take Lisa for granted again. Story 3. Our boss, Dave Smith, had always been a mysterious figure in the office. He was tall and thin, with pale skin and a receding hairline. He always wore a dark suit and tie, and he never took off his sunglasses, even indoors. At first, I thought it was just a fashion statement, but as the weeks turned into months, I began to wonder what he was hiding behind those shades. One day, I was called into Dave's office for a one-on-one meeting. His office was dimly lit, with only a small lamp on his desk providing illumination. I sat down in the chair across from his desk and he began to talk to me about my work performance. He was speaking in a low, monotone voice, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he was looking right through me. Suddenly, he leaned forward to grab a document from his desk. His sunglasses slipped off and I got a glimpse of his eyes. They were dark and lifeless, like two bottomless pits. It was as if the abyss itself was staring back at me. I froze in my chair, unable to look away from his terrifying gaze. Dave's voice turned cold as he said, "You should be very careful from now on." I don't know what he meant by that, but I knew that I had to get out of that room. I stood up and excused myself, and I didn't even bother to say goodbye. I ran out of Dave's office and back to my cubicle. I sat down at my desk and tried to calm myself down, but my heart was still racing. I couldn't stop thinking about Dave's eyes. What darkness lay behind those enigmatic shades? What was he hiding? I never felt the same way about Dave after that day. I avoided him as much as possible, and I always felt like he was watching me. One day, I decided that I couldn't take it anymore. I quit my job and never looked back. Hey everyone, thanks for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to like and subscribe. It helps us out a lot. And if you want to listen to more stories like this, hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Until next time, see you later.